You said the first public zoo arose in the 1700s and it was more of a living museum, but our connection to animals, to nature, and to wildlife in particular has gone back a lot further than that. Earlier this year, we were in London and I was looking around the Tower of London and it was showing the history of keeping various beasts and animals and monkeys there. And that was, as I understand it, happening before we had public zoos. So, what led up to having public zoos, and how did we get to a point of saying, let's open these to the public? Like, what was the historical context before that?
A lot of it was about status. A lot of it was about kings or queens actually gifting animals to other kings and queens. And it was part of the status. If you had a lion or you had some curious animal that no one else was able to house, which is why those animals ended up in the Tower of London. Lions were there. And so there was this whole idea around the status of animals being seen as some sort of a commodity, I suppose, in terms of what you could show about yourself as a human in terms of the animals you were caring for. And really, what happened was the French Revolution. So, when the French Revolution happened, the menagerie of the king was open to the people of Paris. And so that is really sort of what happened in terms of a public zoo. So the people of Paris got to see these animals that were bizarre, curious, never be seen by people before in Paris. So that's really what it took, was a total revolution. But that's really where it started. But previous to that, as you say, people have always been curious about animals. People have always tried to understand them. They're interested in these strange creatures that we share the planet with. But probably what we've now got in society is more an understanding that those animals are sentient, that they have their own feelings, their own thoughts. We understand this. Back in the day, I don't even think we thought that about each other in some extent, but I think we now understand the science of animals a lot more. And we are learning more by the day. We still don't know everything about every animal species on the planet. So that animal science area will continue to grow. And a lot of that really important animal science work does happen in good zoos because we have these animals that we care for and that we know extremely well. And that research and learning component about the animal's behaviour, about their needs, about their welfare perspectives, all of those things we're constantly learning, and we can contribute back to the body of science about those animals.
Wow. I did not know that we have the French Revolution to thank for the first public
Yeah.
zoo. That was one major change, and the other major change was when zoos turned into these conservation-focused organizations. Did that come with understanding the sentience, or was there some other trigger that led to that next shift in the world?
I do think it's been probably, and I remember, I mean, I've been working in zoos now for 35 years, and I can remember we go through these stages where it gets very scientific and you can't even name the animals. They just have to have a number because it had to be, the animal was its own entity and you couldn't name it. It's the stuff that Jane Goodall faced when she was working with the chimps, and she was told by scientists, you should not be naming these chimps. But she did, because they were entities to her that required something more than just a number. And then we went through a period where we did name the animals. Now we've got a mixture of, yes, they do have their registration numbers, if you like, but they also have their names. And I think that makes them more, it's more of them having almost an identity and an essence of their own. And I do think that we can go too far sometimes, either end of the pendulum. And I think somewhere in the middle, which is where good zoos are now, I think is really right, because people in our community really relate to the animals as individuals. It's different in a conservation setting in the wild where the animals are living out there, like with a kiwi that have been released in the hills of Wellington. You know, they don't have, or some of them do actually have names. So it varies in terms of the context. But I do think that that idea that we recognise the animals are their own entities and their own individuals. Because even within a species, even within the animals that we have here at Wellington, they're all individual. Like our chimps are not all the same. They've all got their own essence. And I think that understanding that has become more and more clear to us who work in the animal space. And I mean, as I said, I think it's growing and changing. And I think, 20 years' time, there might be something else in terms of how we look after animals and giving them more agency and things like that about their lives. I think it's a moving thing, it's a changing thing, and I think it's a good thing that it's changing because the more we know, the more we can make those lives better for animals in the wild and also in zoos.